did bow to the Muslim king, while he did not do it to the British Queen of England. And by bowing, he showed the world that I am subservient. I do bow down to you as a Muslim king, something no other president has done with Saudi Arabia. The Saudi king is his peer. He is not his subordinate in order to bow for him. And this is exactly what Obama did. Usually it is out of respect that someone would nod his head when bowing to royalty, and the ladies will give curtsy. But Obama went beyond what is required as a head of state and bowed to the Saudi king, and that's unacceptable. It sent the wrong symbol.
When you say it sends the wrong signal, what signal do you think it sends?
It sent a message that Islam is superior to any other master or king or president in the world, that an American president bowed to a Muslim king. It also sent a message that terrorism and jihadism is giving Islam the respect it should have on the world stage, to the point that it made an American president, for the first time in history, bow to a Muslim king.
Focus on the Federal Reserve itself for a moment, in that I wonder, what percentage of the people know that the Federal Reserve is not really a part of the government, a privately owned corporation, and who owns that, the Federal Reserve? Well, do you have a comment on that?
Well, I think very few people understand how it works, because the members of Congress weren't really very much aware of it. But I think it's a little bit worse than just saying it's private. If it were just private, they'd have to live within the laws of the land of fraud, and they would have to be a public corporation, and if there's a public corporation, you have a right to know what your corporation is doing if you own stock.
And be audited.
Here it's secret, but where do they get their power? Is it the power of the marketplace that creates this corporation? No, they, in addition to being very secretive, have their authorization, their creation from government. So the government creates them, and they create a special thing. So it's much worse than just being a private corporation. It is a very secretive, private, government-ordained corporation that has the power to counterfeit money. So it's very, very unique, and much worse than just being private. It's the secrecy of it and the power that it gets through government legislation that makes it so evil.
Now, you were the ranking Republican on the House Banking Committee for a while.
On one of the subcommittees, but not on the entire committee.
And do I understand correctly that members of Congress can't even go to the Fed meetings?
That's right. I was very interested in the issue, and I was on 3 subcommittees, 2 being on coinage and domestic monetary policy subcommittee, but I could not go to a meeting. I couldn't get an audit. I couldn't even check the books. And they're the ones who create the money. Yet I felt like I was elected to be responsible to the people, and I would be inquisitive and looking into these things. Their attitude is, when you need to know, or when the people need to know, we'll tell you. They're in charge, and we're just on the outside looking in, rather than the people being in charge of the government, sending me or somebody else as their congressman to control the bureaucrats. But it's turned upside down. They have control, and they allow us to know what we want and what they think we should know.
We have responsibility on our own. If we're managing the world reserve currency, we can deal with that. We can deal with our spending policies, our deficits, the pressure on the Fed to inflate. So I think if we do what's right, it'll benefit the entire world.
I agree with that.
In your testimony, you also talk about talking about a new international accord, and that you're working on internationalizing regulations, which literally scare me. I think we have way too many already, and they don't solve the problem. But in those negotiations, since this issue of a new reserve currency is being discussed in the ordinary media, you hear reports. Just this morning I read UN planning a new reserve currency. In these accords, could you tell me, every time this conversation comes up, and what is being talked about, and how you relate to what the Chinese are saying? Yes, they'd like to see a new reserve currency. They'd like to participate in this. And it seems like that would be some very important information for us.
I would be happy to come and talk to you about that privately or in another context.
Gentleman's time has expired.
So you're saying if you buy $300 billion worth of U.S. government debt, that is not inflationary. The true definition of inflation is when you increase the money supply. And the immediate consequence is it sends out false, bad information to the marketplace. So whether it's when the bubble is being formed or afterwards, all you're doing is inflating constantly. You've doubled the money supply. Interest rates are artificial. People make mistakes. So it seems to me that you're in the midst of massive inflation. But I guess you have a different definition. When you double the money supply, that's not inflation itself? Or are you looking at only prices?
May I respond?
Briefly.
Inflation is the change in the price of the consumer price level, which is that's very stable right now. And there are various measures of money, as you know, and the broad measures of money, the measures the measures of money in circulation, like M1 and M2, are not growing quickly.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Baca.
What I'm also hearing is that the basket of currencies that will replace the U.S. dollar will be much more heavily weighted in gold bullion. As much as 50% of the new currency scheme will be weighted in gold bullion. And the point of all this, keep in mind, is that these countries, China, Russia, and Iran, the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, they've made it really no secret that they hope to take down the U.S. economy and take down the U.S. dollar. And this is a move toward taking down the U.S. dollar and the U.S. economy by shifting the way oil is priced out of the world reserve currency, the dollar, which gives America an incredible free pass to finance wars and occupations around the world. China, Iran, and Russia don't want to finance America's military adventures in Afghanistan and Iraq and possibly Iran by allowing the U.S. to have the world's reserve currency, the U.S. dollar, which gives them this what they call coinage, or the ability to make a profit on every single transaction that is done around the world because it's all done in U.S. dollars. So this is really another step toward the U.S. economy collapsing and the U.S. as a major global power collapsing.
Some governments have a nice problem, as Senator Sherrod Brown puts it.
What to do with all the money earned from their abundance of exports, whether it's from barrels of oil or from barrels of monkeys and other toys.
They are flush with cash. The dollar is weak and the U.S. economy faltering. Those governments are on a buying spree, most recently pumping more than $35 billion into Wall Street banks brought down by bad bets on risky mortgages, but also in private equity and technology. Investments Wall Street and the U.S. government have embraced.
The U.S. economy benefits from foreign investment, including investment from sovereign wealth funds.
But there are concerns about the size, growth, and secrecy of some of these funds.
So many are run by undemocratic governments with powerful strategic objectives.
Senator Kaptur worries foreign governments are buying influence and access to technology.
These deals are presented as purely financial when they are in fact political and strategic.
At issue at this hearing, China's $200 billion fund, ranking among the most secret funds in the world, according to an analysis by Standard Chartered Bank. Chinese central planners understandably want to diversify some of their $1.4 trillion in reserves, most invested in U.S. government debt. But some are worried by widespread complaints of intellectual property theft, currency manipulation, and export subsidies.
China itself is likely to be a government that's likely to have a bad sovereign wealth fund that's not in the interest of the United States, and that tough regulations and oversight are needed now in advance of a problem that has not yet emerged, but given the magnitude of the flow of funds over the next decade, it's going to be a serious one.
By the year 2015, some analysts predict that foreign government sovereign wealth funds could hold $10 to $15 trillion.
But the idea that the United States government is turning to the International Monetary Fund to set standards for the sovereign wealth, this administration in so doing has basically just said it is incapable through either our Department of the Treasury or our Department of Commerce or certainly the White House to come up with its own standards and regulations for this economy. These people, do they have any concept of what fools they look to be?
I can't speak for them, but I can say that many of the sovereign wealth fund managers have said that they want to make sure those guidelines are voluntary only, that they are not set in stone, that they are voluntary.
We wouldn't want to impose on anyone, American law, for goodness sake. This administration would not have that. That would be unseemly of us, I think. Christine, thank you very much. A very sobering report.